The only true
Congratulations, by the way.
Thank you.
I think
So it's something we're very proud of, obviously, but we founded the company with a very simple vision. We just wanted to make PC gaming easier for everybody. And if you want to DIY your own system, that's always the best solution. We're never going to be able to build something better than you can build it yourself. But whenever it comes a time where maybe you just want to focus on the games, we have a solution for you that's turnkey, that's well supported, that's incredible quality, and you don't have to worry about the hardware. You can just focus on your game. And over that 20-year history, we've focused a lot on how do we make gaming more immersive? And it's been very incremental in the evolution that we've been able to bring. We were able to bring gaming from desktops to notebooks. We were able to introduce higher resolution, better colors, faster response times, faster frames per second. We were able to make all these little incremental steps. But when we initially met with Occulus, 4 years ago maybe, when they were still a Kickstarter, it was kind of like this obscure little back room in E3, I can still remember it. Brendan, their CEO, put a headset on me, and that was not an incremental evolution anymore. This was a major leaps and bounds step for us, and something that we dreamed of for a long time as gamers and people in the industry. And it was still, it was a DK1. It was rough, but you can see the future clearly. And we, at that moment, it was obvious to us, we had to commit to this. We had to take the history that we've done in PC gaming in kind of evolving that flat screen and apply that to where VR was going to be headed. So from a product strategy perspective, as Oculus has evolved in bringing VR to the market, we've also been evolving how we plan our products to not only cater to PC gaming as in the traditional sense as we've known it for the last 30 or so years, but also how do we apply VR thinking in everything that we're planning for the future. So you'll start seeing our products take into account more and more VR considerations, whether it be how do we deliver performance needs of VR, how do we help resolve some of the latency challenges that are out there with VR, how do we make the price points more accessible so more people can enjoy VR. Hopefully next year everybody can raise their hand in here when you ask that question. So that's our commitment moving forward. We're not going to move away from PC gaming, of course. They're kind of hand in hand with one another. Everything is pretty much almost a PC game now in VR, which is kind of like this amazing world that we're going to be living in the future. So we're really excited.
So, I mean, as a follow-up, I guess, you've got 20 years now of building these gaming rigs. Is it safe to say that designing a VR rig and a high-end gaming rig is that one and the same, or are there some very specific considerations that you're giving? I mean, you mentioned all these things, the latency and the thing, but I imagine there's several things that we haven't even thought of that we have to consider for a VR rig.
Well, the biggest sensitivity that we have, and not just us, but of course the headset manufacturers and the content providers, we're kind of all in this together, is in the old days when a PC game, when it was a performance issue, you drop a frame or two and it was a little bit annoying, you get a little bit of a slideshow, and we still kind of all deal with that here, right? So you tweak, you buy the right hardware, you make sure there was no stuff running in the background to try and give you an experience where you wouldn't deal with that. But the biggest consequence you deal with was it's annoying. In VR, when you drop a frame, you start vomiting all over the floor. So it's a much bigger and worse consequence. So for us, it's forced us to have to think a little bit differently about the sensitivity of maintaining that frame rate and ensuring that that's not an average anymore or a max frame rate, but that becomes a minimum frame rate. So again, when I talk about design consideration, there's consideration around how do we deal with ports, how do we deal with the latency of the ports, there's hardware things, right? But then there's also that experience. How are we going to design our products and make sure that they're messaged correctly to everybody? When we say it's VR ready, it's not that it's VR capable or it's recommended for VR, but meets the minimum requirement for VR, so everyone has a great experience.
And I mean, you mentioned a few things in there, and I want to ask a question that's pretty obvious, but like, how important then do you feel that education is when it comes to VR from a hardware perspective?
Well, it's very similar to where Alienware was in 1996. When you looked at the PC gaming landscape, it was really a very fragmented market. It was kind of this niche. It was tiny. There were a couple games emerging, and there was really nobody specializing in solving the needs of PC gamers. So we kind of look at VR similarly to that opportunity that we saw in 1996, in that today it's still a little bit tough. You kind of need to be in the know around what graphics cards are going to work, what USB controllers are going to work correctly, what the right processor to have is, how much memory you need to have. And then there's a bunch of other variables in the software image and the Windows updates that you've got and the driver versions of all those different things that power it. So to DIY it yourself, it's not as simple necessarily as it is today to just DIY a gaming rig. You can kind of slap some parts together, and pretty much anybody can turn it on and get it to work. VR requires a little bit more technical savviness in order to get it to work. So for us, it's basically back to the future. You know, we've been doing this a really long time. We know how to do it. We know how to do it well. We know how to innovate and add value to products so that they're turnkey. They're in all types of different shapes and sizes, all types of different price points for folks, so that the experience scales according to what you can afford, of course. So it's very native to us. So, you know, it's just around, hey, this is a use case. It's VR. It's a little different than PC gaming in some ways, and us designing to that.
Great. So, in an effort to sort of connect the dots between the hardware, the platforms, and the development, I want to kind of shift over and ask the question. You know,